We have a huge piece of breaking news when it comes to the invasion, the devastation in Gaza. Hamas has apparently accepted a ceasefire proposal, according to Al Jazeera, put forward by Egypt and Qatar. Hamas said that the head of its political bureau, Ismail Haniyeh, told the Qatari prime minister and Egyptian intelligence minister that the militant group had accepted their proposal. And so here are just a few of the top line components of this. Bear in mind that Israel has not fully agreed to it yet. They were a party to it, but they haven't agreed to it. So it would be the release of between 20 and 33 hostages over several weeks in exchange for a temporary ceasefire and a release of some amount of Palestinian prisoners as well. So there's a lot there that is still vague, but obviously having the two parties to the conflict, or at least one group, the remnants of which are still in the area that's being utterly bombarded, I suppose, is an important part of it. Now, it seems to me, it feels a little bit kind of like the whole border deal that theoretically you're helping to craft it, but there's no guarantee that you'll actually support it in the end. And we have to see if those components of it change over time. And also when you say temporary ceasefire, is that literally several weeks? And bear in mind, this is coming out at the same time, the same day when Israel had warned about 100,000 Palestinians living in Rafa that they needed to get the hell out of there, signaling that an invasion was imminent. And so exactly where they're supposed to go when this is basically like the last lingering holdout, who the hell knows? But Francesca, what do you make of all this?
I mean, honestly, this flies in the face of some of the narrative that we've been hearing from IDF propagandists that Hamas has been unwilling to do any kind of ceasefire negotiations. What they actually don't specify is that there's never really been an offer of ceasefire from Israel. There has been you release all the hostages and then we'll stop bombing. That's not a ceasefire agreement. That's not a negotiation. It is, we will cease the fire so that we can actually release hostages. And so that needs to be a first step, and it's always been a first step. And it was the only time that hostages actually were freed in this 7-month long, what I would call a genocide. And so would 57% of Biden voters call a genocide. It's when there was a ceasefire first. But Israel keeps on gaslighting us and telling us that it's Hamas that has been unwilling to create any kind of negotiation, when that's not true. And they have always said that they will, if the firing stops, if the bombing stops, they would be willing to release hostages. Now, here's the thing. We have to see whether Israel would even go along with this, right? Because Israel is on the precipice of an invasion of Rafa. They've been bombing homes and apartment buildings and places where people, including women and children, have been sheltering last night and the night before. Every single day, there are more and more shelling and reports of civilians being killed in Rafa. So all signs point to the fact that this Rafa invasion is already underway. And again, as you mentioned, all those leaflets are just sort of warning, like, hey, leave. Where? Can they go through Egypt? No, they can't. What they're telling them is to leave and go to Khan Yunis, which is the city up north, which is completely devastated. There are no hospitals, there is no infrastructure, there is no nothing. It is literally just rubble. So the question is where to? Meanwhile, the north of Gaza is in full famine. So again, it feels like a little bit, John, that this is like for the history books. It's like, well, Hamas agreed, so at least they won't have that propaganda line to lean on as they continue to murder civilians.
I mean, look, they can easily throw out they can ignore it, or they can say that they're agreeing in bad faith, which I don't know, maybe in some components they are. So I don't think this is necessarily putting them in as difficult a rhetorical position as you might imagine, but yeah, when you think about, like you talk about how utterly devastated the north of Gaza is, we've seen estimates of what percentage of buildings are even standing, let alone critical infrastructure, like you said, hospitals and those sorts of things. And they're already experiencing a famine. And now you're saying that best case scenario, you send close to 10% of the entire population of Gaza back up to the area that already doesn't have the resources or food to sustain the few people remaining there.
Right.
How is that supposed to work? Or is it that it's not supposed to work? And who cares, because these aren't really people, so what does it matter?
And it is in Netanyahu's political interest to keep on with the war and the invasion. Biden always says that the invasion of Rafa would be a red line, but have we seen a single red line from Joe Biden on Netanyahu and this extremist government that even leading Democrats like Chuck Schumer say is extremist? We need new elections in Israel. When? You need a ceasefire is what you need, my dude. You need a ceasefire 6-7 months ago, but they still can't procure that.
That's a thing that would have to happen now, whereas you can call for elections and that just happens at some point or whatever.
Exactly.
So I don't think that Joe Biden is going to establish a red line, but my advice to him would be that if you are going to establish a red line, write it in colored pencil, because you're going to be erasing it in the very near future to place it a little bit further out. And you're not going to want any lingering residue of like Sharpie or anything. So anyway, look, ostensibly a slightly positive development, but it's like Hamas agreeing to it is one of the least consequential parts. Like the force that's invading and occupying and devastating the area seems more relevant, but we'll see what ends up happening with that. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.